Thank you, Mr. Owen. Will the city clerk please give us a roll call?
Committee Member Childers?
Here.
Committee Member Owen?
Here.
And Chair Benedetti?
Here. The next item on the agenda is the public comment period. I'll assume that Mr. Posada is not going to make any comments since I didn't get a slip from him to speak.
Correct, no public
So,
comment.
okay, all right. It's nice when you run a meeting, you know all the audience members out there. Okay. Okay. The next item is the business items, and we have the first item of business on that is the minutes of the February 27th, 2023 meeting, and the recommendation is approval, but I'll just ask if there's any comments by staff or the board. I guess we're called the committee.
No comments. I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes as submitted.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes for the February 27th, 2023 meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. The next item is item 4B, overview of Measure U. And we're going to be receiving a report by staff. It looks like we're going to have the Assistant City Manager, Mr. Wu, is going to make a presentation first on this.
Good evening, Chair Benedetti, committee members. I'm here to highlight some activities from Measure U, but we also have Interim Finance Director Zena Bradford here. And I think some of the information we will have will complement each other. There may be some items here that probably should come after Zena's presentation, but the way that the agenda is structured, I'll go ahead and share some department highlights. And I'll start with public safety, with fire and police. As you know, Measure U allows funding for salaries and wages, but also material supplies, equipment and operations, contracts and service and capital projects. Measure U supplements all the fire department's needs to provide service for the residents of Santa Maria. Over the past year, in terms of projects, there's been some design work for this expansion of Station 1, as well as a future Santa Maria training facility. Purchases over this past year include a ladder truck, Type 1, and then one for a Type 1 engine, 2 Type 6 engines, 2 prevention vehicles, and 2 chief's vehicles. Moving on to police, currently 48 full-time positions are funded by Measure U, with 9 more in fiscal year 24-25 for 57 total. 46 of these are sworn. Something that's been a highlight for police has been the worn body cameras, Axon, and this project is 1.8 million over 5 years. Approximately 450,000 came from replacement fund for the vehicle cameras, with the remainder fully funded by Measure U. So roughly 1.3 million are Measure U supported. And as you're aware, beyond just public safety, Measure U funds youth and quality of life services, and these are implemented through various departments, including the library, community development, which houses code enforcement, as well as recreation and parks. So I'll start with the library. In Q1 of 22-23, the bookmobile increased new card issuances by 150%. In Q4 of 22-23, the library youth services and programs increased its levels, exceeded pre-pandemic levels by 17%. Also, in the same time period, the library outreach has increased 31%. The library is also working closely with IT to complete a security camera project set to be completed by this fiscal year, which will update the existing outdated cameras throughout the library, creating a safer and more welcoming space. There's been a new program called Music and Movement, which helps the youth develop motor and listening skills, and what we call Family Yoga Story Time. And these are just two examples of the approximately 700 annual programs presented by Measure U funded staff. And in regards to the Bookmobile, Q2 23-24, Bookmobile served over 2,500 community members at regular stops and outreaches. In Q3, the Bookmobile hosted 11 regular weekly stops on its route and attended 13 outreach events. Moving on to community development and code enforcement. Currently there are 7 full-time positions. There is a manager, a supervisor, 4 code enforcement officers, and 1 code enforcement technician. In 2023, 1,526 cases were opened and 1,442 cases were closed. The code officers have been working closely with PD and the Rangers on addressing unhoused individuals on privately owned property. Now, on the discussion of homelessness, this is a joint coordinated effort that also includes a work with the county and with service providers. But in terms of city staff, it's our beat coordinators with PD, it's our rangers, and then it's our code office. But the code officers primarily work with private property owners. They work with the shopping centers to make sure there's adequate security, and they work with the property owners to make sure that they have the permissions that they need to make sure that any safety issues are addressed, again, in coordination with PD and Rangers. The code officers have also been working with the county public health on addressing unpermitted food vendors. You may have seen them around the community, and the code officers have been working closely with the county to make sure that they either leave town or get the proper permits. Code has also assisted fire with the enforcement of illegal fireworks. This happened in 2023. And in terms of public outreach, they are doing the neighborhood walk and talks. They have been putting out this video series called Did You Know series. So this is something they would put on YouTube, and it would be kind of a 5-minute segment informing residents what's allowed, what's not allowed, things that typically come up in frequently asked questions. They've also worked closely with the Chamber and Allen Hancock College. There are some classes that they've participated in helping small business owners remain compliant with regulations. Again, other typical functions, reducing blight, addressing substandard housing, and again, inspecting and permitting mobile and commercial car wash operations. With Rec and Parks and the Rangers, again, they provide surveillance over our many facilities, and they do work closely with the other departments in making sure that we address issues that may arise at our public facilities. This is, again, just a quick snapshot of Measure U activities over this past year. Zena is going to get into more details in regards to the financials, and I'll conclude my part of the presentation and welcome any questions you may have. There are multiple department directors here that can get into the details of specific programs should you're interested, or we can wait until after Zena's presentation to address questions you may have.
Are there any questions? Mr. Wu? No? Okay. Okay, so thank you very much. It looks like the interim director of finance is going to, Xenia Bradford. Ms. Bradford, you're going to be presenting the next part of this?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
Good evening, committee. I am Zena Bradford, Interim Finance Director. I will be doing a presentation on the activities and the financials for the fiscal year 22-23. So as you know, the purpose of your committee, specifically here today, that you will be presented annual written report, review that, and make recommendations if you decide so to bring the report to City Council. The specific recommendations that we have in front of you today is for you to prepare a written report for the City Council consideration, or staff will prepare that, and you would review it at the next meeting. You would approve it at the next meeting, and you would set a date for the next meeting if you decide to do so. And the proposed date that we already have scheduled tentatively on our calendars is March 25th at 5:30 p.m. So first I'll go through some numbers that were included when the budget was prepared originally for 22-23. We did see that consumer spending did not decline, so some of the revenue estimates were actually revised upward at the time. It was a positive outlook. With that outlook, the city committed to additional funding to these areas. So police got, for example, $2.5 million additional funds, fire 5.4, et cetera. And the total increase for that budget from Measure U allocations was to the tune of $9.4 million. Just to highlight some of the additions that were presented within that budget or changes. In this particular case, you will see in the numbers that the code enforcement was transferred from City Attorney's Office to Community Development, so some of the variances in the financials will be due to that operating change. The City Manager Office had funded from Measure U funds a mass notification annual subscription increase. For fire department, there was quite a few additions, mostly in your staffing levels, as you can see on this slide. They also had planned to buy some significant purchases in equipment, and we'll talk about some carryovers on those in just a little bit. The library department had some additional staffing that was committed, as well as additional security access readers and improvements to the cameras equipment. Police department, once again, had some additional positions allocated from Measure U, ballistic equipment, customer response platform, annual support, body and vehicle camera technology, and tasers. And then finally, the Recreation and Parks Department added the Parks and Service Officer, security aid, and STEAM equipment. Now we can look a little bit at the history of the actual revenues from Measure U. This chart here shows you the 10-year history of how Measure U funds have increased over time and have allowed for this additional funding for the specific areas as directed by City Council policy. So this slide here is fairly busy, but it shows you the 22-23 budget that we just talked about compared to the actuals. And what this shows here is that the budget was underspent by $6.6 million, and that was primarily due to large equipment purchases and some vacancies. This slide here shows the distribution based on council policy of how Measure U should be allocated. So you see that the commitment is 90% of Measure U would be committed to public safety. It's actually by policy 5% and 5% for youth services and quality of life categories. However, due to some of the variations in expenditures, our totals are at 96% and 4% respectively. Now, the city does allow carry forwards for certain items to be brought forward. So at the end of the year, departments can request carry forwards, which are approved by City Manager and Finance. And so these were the carry forward items that were moved forward in a total of $4.5 million. So out of that $6.6 million, 4.5 was actually moved forward into the next year. That concludes my report on the actuals for the financials. I do want to point out that the audit results are actually unaudited at this point. The city is still working on catching up on some of the financial reporting, which is why the draft of the financial statements says draft, so it is unaudited information at this point. And now I'd like to just show you this graph as well, just looking forward at the issues and challenges for Measure U. This is something that we are seeing, very similar picture for general fund. But what this shows is that the red is the expenditures and the green is the revenues. And so even though we continue to project a moderate growth in revenues going into the future, you will see that due to increases in cost of operating, primarily your salaries and benefits, over the years, the expenditure line to fund everything that Measure U funds today is actually the expenditures are outpacing the revenues. So given this picture, Measure U will be able to fund less positions, less things with the given revenues than it did before, just because of the increases in operating costs. The 40.4 million you see there in the current year represents those carryovers that I talked about, as well as some additional one-time expenditures that the city allocated with the 23-24 budget, which you will be seeing a report on those expenditures a year from now. And that concludes my presentation. Any questions?
Mr. Raffer, you indicated that in our packet tonight, for the agenda, that the financial statement is the unaudited draft version of it, and you expect that to be done before the March 25th meeting?
It is not entirely certain at this point. I actually don't expect it to be audited by the auditor by the 25th, just based on their schedule. But the city is in process of finalizing the financials.
Because normally our second meeting is the meeting where we approve the audited financial statement, review that. So would you be expecting then to reschedule that March 25th meeting if it's not available to, if the audited financial statement's not available?
I think it would be possible for the committee to prepare a report on operating expenditures, which are, I would say, fairly close here, to the city council, and then if you desire, maybe schedule another meeting for just to receive the audited results.
Yeah, I'm not sure we actually, so it's more important right now, you feel, to present to the city council the proposed use of the funds as opposed to last year's numbers. I mean, we generally don't have any changes to the numbers, you know, in the audit. So, okay, I get that. So we'll still plan on meeting on March 25th. Will all of you be available on March 25th? Okay. Okay. And yeah, so thank you for clarifying that. I agree with you on that. So I'm not sure we're going to need to meet a third meeting just to receive the audit report. You could send it to us, but we could always ratify that audit report next year. You know, so, all right, I appreciate that. Are there any other questions for Ms. Bradford? Of the financial numbers?
I don't have any questions. I do have a question for the fire chief about the civilian training officer. What is that position going to do? I know you look at the traditional rank structure of the fire department, and the training officer is a chief officer so that he can tell the subordinates what to do. And how is a civilian going to work into that chain of command type thing?
Correct. Thank you for the question. Just to clarify that position, one of the asks...
Excuse me. Go ahead. Please introduce yourself for the record because I'm going to ask everybody to introduce themselves later in a minute, but just so we are recording it so that...
Yes, sir.
So, yeah.
Brad Dandridge, Fire Chief.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Danders.
No worries. Sorry about that. The civilian training coordinator that we asked for was a position that we needed in the fire department in regards to quantifying and actually collecting correct and accurate data. when we looked at the strategic plan, one of the criticisms that we had that was conducted in 2021, one of the criticisms, as well as the master plan that was just recently conducted, was the fact that our training isn't classified the way that it should be, and it actually affects ISO ratings as well as everything else. It wasn't being captured in the best possible manner. So therefore, what I am utilizing that civilian training coordinator as is someone that's coordinating training, capturing the training that we're conducting. We train quite a bit in the City of Santa Maria Fire Department, but we weren't capturing those things adequately to get credit for them. So that training coordinator is designing the criteria, developing lesson plans, putting together lesson plans that are being conducted by the training captain, what they're doing out in the field, and more importantly, capturing it so when we do get audits, it is captured and verified.
So that position is kind of a focal point. All of the training will be done as it has been for the most part, and all the data and all the information will be focal point will be that training officer.
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Childers? No? Okay, so is there any other comments from staff before we move on to the recommendation no? Okay. On the agenda, they're asking us to have 2 items to vote for on this section. And one is to direct staff to prepare a written report to be reviewed and approved by the committee at a special meeting indicating that Measure U revenues were received, expenses made are consistent with the intent as set forth by the City Council. And this Part B of that is to confirm the date and time for that meeting, which it's been presented to us that we can put in the agenda, we can put into the motion that will confirm that that date and time will be March 25th at 5:30 in the City Council chambers here. So I'll take a recommendation from the committee. If you want to just say so moved, since I just read it, that's fine with me. Okay. Okay.
Second?
All right. So I read the items in the agenda. It was moved and seconded that we approve the items as recommended in the agenda for that March 25th meeting and to present this report. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. The next item is chair and committee member items. Mr. Childers, you have any? No? Okay. Mr. Owen?
I have no items because I can't remember and I didn't write them down.
Well, they might come to, so I have a couple of things I would like to bring up, but I'd like to put Mr. Prasad on the spot for just a second. It's a very kind thing, if you could. Mr. Prasad, just as a matter of courtesy and protocol, could you please ask your staff, we haven't met probably anybody in this room except for you. So if you could, Mr. Danners, I think, was here at the last meeting too. But if you could just do us a favor and introduce your staff, just who's here tonight?
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. So I want to start with Angela Oslin. Angela is the interim Recreation and Parks Director. She's
Great.
filling in over at the department.
Filling in for the absent
person.
Recreation Parks Director? Okay.
Absent-minded person. Don Jackson, our Director of Library Services, also the interim Human Resource Officer right now. So she's filling in. Brad Dandridge, Fire Chief. He's not interim. He's really here.
He was interim last year. Yeah.
Police Chief, Mark Schneider. He's
Mark?
also here.
Mark was here last year too, I think. Weren't you?
Most of you probably don't know Tom Watson, City Attorney. Tom doesn't come to these meetings, I don't think, that often. Usually we see Wendy or somebody. So I'm Wendy. Geez, where am I going in the past? I'm going back. Interim Assistant City Manager, Mr. Wu, and he's also continuing as Community Development Director. Alex Valadez is filling in as our clerk. And She's also our CMO Employee of the Year, just so you know.
Oh,
I'd like
congratulations.
to give her those strokes. And our interim finance director, Zena Bradford, which you've met
Great.
in her presentation. And I really want to thank everybody on the staff for stepping forward. This is new ground for everybody, just like they're new in their roles here. The presentation, we hope, is informative. Certainly, I wish the picture looked better than it does, but we are gearing up for some tighter times, as the graph indicates. But we're working on it. We have a good team in Zena and finance working on those
Thank you.
challenges. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. I'd like to, before we adjourn tonight, I'd like to just present, I have this in my expandable file here. So this is some information about this committee. So this is the 10th anniversary of when we met, and the very first press release that we had, the Santa Maria Times put out by the chairman, Trent Benedetti, says that we met on January 27th, 2014 for our first meeting. And then we met, and then on Tuesday, March 18th, 2014, 10 years ago this month, we presented to the City Council the first annual report of the Committee on Measure U related activities. So it's quite a journey from 10 years ago. So not to mention the fact that I was on that committee, to the Citizens Committee that was involved in helping to get this measure passed, so that meetings actually started long before that. But anyway, so I just thought it would be kind of nice to put in the minutes that this is the 10th anniversary of when this body started and this whole thing started. So it's been kind of fun along the way, watching everything come together. So some of you have been on these staff. I think Mark was on the city police for those 10 years ago when this all started, right? Yeah. Yeah, it's done tremendous stuff for the 90% plus the extra 10% that we have out there. It's been great, great. So anyways, that's my comment, and I appreciate everybody's work tonight and getting this together. You did good. And yeah.
Mr. Chair, I do have a comment. I forgot.
You remember now.
I want to keep the tradition going. Over the years, the community has stepped up and has supported the city with their vote. I use it in my fire academy classes that I teach. 74.9% of the people that voted in that last election when Measure U became permanent, 74.9% of the people that voted said, yes, raise my taxes. I think it's a good thing. And, you know, it's still, to this day, just boggles my mind that many people, when you look at society in general right now, that everybody's anti-taxes. And these people that voted said, that's a good idea. Yes, raise my taxes. Thank you.
Well, you know, at 6:59, I'd like to get out of here in less than half an hour, so I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Thank you.